Hey everyone, Ryan Young, Kama Jiu-Jitsu, and it's some nice Saturday night here in Texas, and it was just raining, and thought I'd kind of come out after it stopped and do a quick little video for you guys. The last few videos that I've done have been on some historical aspect of Jiu-Jitsu, whether it be the belt system, the history of the Gracie family going back to Jigoro Kano. And I just did one which one of you asked for on who's more important to Jiu-Jitsu, Elio Gracie or Carlos Gracie Sr. I want to thank you guys all for sharing our posts, sharing the videos, liking them, subscribing to the page, and helping to get the word out. I'm trying to make this a really good informational experience for you all. Anybody can do technique. Technique is great. We don't do too many technique videos, but because we think that other things are just as important to know. But the video that I wanted to do tonight is really the definition of what old school jiu-jitsu is. You hear a lot of people kind of throwing that around. Somebody who's been training for 10 years, they say, "Oh, I'm old school." Maybe. Old school to me, there's a few different things that would have to be there for me to say we're looking at somebody who's an old school jiu-jitsu guy. Number one is, when did they start? Kind of thing you're looking at, really, if somebody started before 2000, chances are they are. After 2000, maybe. Because how long have the Gracies been here? Well, Carlet Gracie got here a while ago. I think I remember him coming in the 70s. He was one of the very first ones here. But he didn't teach too many people. I mean, I don't think he had an academy. There was no Gracie Jiu-Jitsu Academy in San Francisco where he was. The actual Gracie Jiu-Jitsu Academy didn't start until Horian Gracie opened it in the early 90s in Torrance, California. But he was here teaching. He and Hickson and Hoyce, they were teaching in the garages way before that. I would take a guess. Somebody like Professor Richard Bressler would know better. He was Horian Gracie's first student in the U.S. I would guess maybe 84 or so. Anything prior to that, even in Brazil, that's old school as well. But as far as the U.S., very young market in the U.S. at the time. The first thing is the time. When did you start? Okay, that's number one. Number two is, were tournaments prevalent when you were training? So when we started, there were no tournaments, absolutely none. Tournaments didn't really start until probably 92, maybe 93. Joe Moreira used to do them occasionally. We had a Hickson school versus Gracie Torrance school one. And I think Kleber Luciano started doing them probably in the mid to late 90s. Carlos Gracie Jr. started to hold some, I think, with the first Pan Am back in the late 90s. That's when the tournaments started. They were very occasional. We might have 2, 3 a year, and that's really about it. What's the significance of having very few tournaments? Well, if there weren't that many tournaments, we weren't training for them. We were training self-defense. We were training for Gracie challenges. We were training for fights. That's the old school mentality. It's not tournaments. We might be lucky to have a tournament a year, and if there was, we'd kind of be preparing the month prior, just for 30 days prior, just really go over the rules and how to score points, so that position-wise you don't get taken advantage of, and that if it ends up going to a decision, then you did it by points. But back then it was all about submissions. In fact, we didn't even know how to calculate points. We had to be kind of informed on what a point thing was worth, what a position was worth points wise. So we would prepare for a tournament, I would say kind of half-assedly, for maybe the 30 days or sometimes just 2 weeks prior to a tournament. But prior to that, we don't care about tournaments. We just wanted to fight. The last thing that I think would qualify you as old school was who your teacher was. So back then, really the only ones that taught were Elio's sons, and you had the Machados that were there too. Although the Machados, once the Gracie family broke off from the Machado family, they opened the Gracie Academy. Then the Machado family, they went the competition route. I remember Hadra Machado telling me specifically When I asked him, do you do the self-defense? Do you teach all that stuff? Because I know he knows it. But he says, no, my brothers and I, we made a conscious decision to just do more the jiu-jitsu side, and that's what he called it. But in reality, to us, jiu-jitsu is all-encompassing. But he says, no, we just wanted to do the jiu-jitsu side, which really was just the ground stuff. They got very good at it. Being you specialize in it, you get very good at it. Your students get very good very quickly. But the ones that got their black belts early on, the ones that were training in the garage, even the ones that got their black belts from the Machados early on, they learned all the self-defense because Jorge and Gracie pretty much ran everything that way. So that's how everybody learned, Dave Kama included. So really the three things that would qualify for your old school, if somebody's saying they're an old school professor, is did they start their training prior to the year 2000? Okay, if that's good, if that's a check, then yes. Were they learning from preferably one of Elio Gracie's sons? Okay, if so, then check that box. And when they were learning, what was the primary focus of their training? Was it to prepare for tournaments, or was it to prepare to fight? Then that's really your answer there. Because once 2000 rolled around and the tournaments became more prolific, then they would be kind of often. I mean, you'd get them where they became from once a year to maybe once a quarter to once a month. And now you have them pretty often, especially in Southern California. So what happens is the school, they end up just preparing for tournaments constantly. They're not preparing for Gracie challenges. They're not preparing for fights or anything like that. It's something to think about. People who learned under the old school system, they tend to continue on that tradition. So who are, besides Elio's instructor, I have to kind of add a couple more. Pedro Sauer definitely is an old school guy. Joe Moreira is one of the older guys in the U.S. teaching. But then once a lot of the Brazilians started to come into the U.S., once they started, come out and train and live and all that, then that's when the tournament game got really, really popular, and that's when it really started to pick up. Because a lot of them, they were already, by that time in Brazil, tournaments were pretty prolific. In the U.S., still kind of an infancy stage. There's it's one of my dogs there. That's really the whole thing about old school. What's the goal of it? A lot of people like to kind of talk about being old school, and I'm not one to say that one isn't or isn't, is or isn't. I'm just saying that's pretty much the three criteria that you would have, in my view, to qualify as being an old school guy. Some look at it as a badge of honor, some don't. It really doesn't matter. Anyway, that's all I got for you. It's starting to pick up as far as the rain here, so I'm going to go inside. And I hope you guys are all having a safe time training, and you guys have a great night. Talk to you soon. Happy training. Bye.